And I do believe you need different mentors for different seasons in your life. Do you want somebody that provokes your thinking, your thought process, what you know to be true? Or do you want somebody who aligns with you and supports you? The job still needed to get done, even when my heart was in shambles.
Hello and welcome to the Kind Regards podcast. I'm your host, Zamio Emwate, and this week we're picking up our conversation where we left off with Bwalya Mundashi, Zambia National Commercial Bank's head of marketing. Stay tuned as Bwalya shares an anecdote about a career setback she encountered, how she bounced back from that, and the vital role mentorship has played in her journey. We even touch on how to navigate a mentorship relationship breakup. Without further ado, let's jump back into it. What would you say has been the biggest contributor to your success in your career so far?
I don't think I'm there yet, so I like this so far.
To your journey so far, what do you think has been the biggest contributor to your journey so far?
Putting my hand up and mentors and sponsors. Very, very early in my career within the Accelerated Leadership Program at the tobacco company, and I was linked to a mentor. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, why do I have to have this person that I need to talk to? But I realized very quickly that they make you see yourself outside yourself. And that's why sometimes I cover people experiencing you. And sometimes they're also able to show you that you're capable of more than, like, help you think and remove the limitations you place on yourself. Where for me, age was a big factor. My mentor told me you have the capability. Your age shouldn't be a factor. So you've got the capability. So put your hand up. And because for me, I feel like the success has been driven by God, for one, because I'm so blessed to have met people in my life that have helped me along my journey. But people seeing and believing in me has been a big, big driver. And consistency. How are you showing up? So if two bosses ago can say the same thing about you, that speaks about your personal brand and your passion for excellence.
What has been the highlight of your career so far?
I think my current role. I never imagined I'd work for a financial institution. And funny enough, in 2016 or so, I think, I told my mentor I had a 5-year plan. And he seemed to say, 5-year plan? What do you mean? Tell me about it. So in my 5-year plan, I told him I wanted to do brand marketing. I told him I wanted to do strategy and insights. I gave him a whole thing about how I want to do these things and in the order I wanted to do them. And I want to be married by this age and I want to have kids by this age. And you could see his smirk like, oh my gosh, so naive. And ultimately, my favorite, most admired brand at the time was Standard Chartered. And I said, I will be the group marketing executive at Standard Chartered in 10 years. But 5 years short term, these are the competencies I need to build to get to the Standard Chartered group marketing executive. So life did not work like I had imagined it in that 5-year plan. There were a lot of pivots. But back into those mentoring sessions were, so what if you've turned left or right? The goal should still remain the same. And when I moved into construction, banking and finance was never something that I thought my skill set would fit in. So the kind of marketing I'm doing, the big ideas, the passion and the energy, I didn't see that there would be a correlation with banking and finance. So it just happened that little girl who wrote in her notebook ended up, the brand Standard Chartered has evolved and changed and may not have the same allure that it did 10 years ago, but things worked out the way they were supposed to.
I like that you've mentioned the transition between industries. How has that been for you?
So the transition has been very interesting in that at the core of it, marketing fundamentals remain the same, but it's taking a step back and seeing what competencies that you've garnered along the way and how they can be repackaged for the product that you're trying to look at. I remember working as a brand exec in South Africa and then coming in to manage one of the biggest cement brands in the country. And I told myself I will do this the same way I marketed a high-end tobacco product. And at some point I thought, can you do that? But then as I started to apply myself, the principles really do remain the same. Creating individuality in brands, creating personality in brands can cut across different sectors. And all the fundamentals and the principles that have been in my little toolbox that I call just really taking a step back, stripping out the product, stripping out the industry and then seeing how you can reapply yourself. But also learning. I mean, principles that were the it on how to make content viral in 2018 are no longer relevant today. So how do you then learn and relearn to ensure that you're staying ahead of the curve?
It's interesting that you say that, the principles remain the same, but at the same time, you need to keep learning. Because I remember someone saying, what got you here isn't what's going to get you there.
Exactly, the 120%. So the tactics that you used to grow and be number one 3 years ago, maybe the foundation is the same, but you have to sort of be able to change a few things around. Spring clean, come back, move the furniture around.
Yeah. You've mentioned mentors twice now, and I think perhaps we could just deep dive into that discussion. Were all your mentors chosen for you, or did you choose some of your mentors?
So my first mentor was imposed on me as part of my program. And I think from the onset, I then learned the value of having a mentor. I remember she once said to me, I had been working for a year and I had a very long weave and I had just done my nails. And she looks at me and she says, how long have you been working? And at the time I was living with my sister, I think. And then I said, I just clocked a year, and I was very excited. And then she says, okay, so what do you have to show for it? I was like, how dare you ask me a question like
Loaded question.
It was a loaded question. So she says, no, you have to take stock, take inventory of the relationship you have with your organization. Remember, it's a transaction. You offer a service and they give you a salary. But what do you have to show for the work that you're doing? And ever since then, that's something that's been ingrained in me to say, what do I have to show for the work that I'm doing? But also just having that person that can call you out and hold you accountable has been something that I've enjoyed and I've been very grateful to have. And after that, I have chosen my mentors. And I do believe you need different mentors for different seasons in your life. When I was young and starting out, I needed a lot of molding and guidance, sort of to hone the energy into the right direction. Then as I was getting into the middle part, I mean, I still feel like I'm fairly young within my career. As I sort of settled into self, the big decisions, sort of someone to just bounce those things off, have those discussions. Now I'm married, more in a surer sense of self. Again, the mentor changes to somebody who can then relate to the time in my life that I'm in. And the conversations are very, very different from the conversations I was having in 2015 and 16.
I like that your mentor asked you, what do you have to show for the work that you're doing? I think that's something that a lot of us should take on and reflect. And I think a big part of that as well is building relationships across our organizations or industry, etc. How have you gone about that in your career?
So with regards to building relationships, I think I've been very deliberate in making myself known and seen. And in certain instances, some might say you're being forward. But again, back to my dad's words, what do you have to lose? I remember finishing my program. So our accelerated program entailed that we spend time in our head office in Cape Town, and then when the program is done, they send you back to your end markets. So there was a lady from Angola, myself from Zambia. There was another guy from South Africa, but based in Joburg. And we're coming to the end. And my fear was always that, okay, if I go back to Zambia, this experience will be wasted because then all the action happens in Cape Town. How am I going to be known? So I go to his PA, the GM for Southern Africa, and I say, can I have an appointment? And then she's like, what do you want to talk about? I said, can I just have 10 minutes and just put it as catch up with Bwalya? Sam, GT, graduate trainee. So he sits, big guy, and he sits on his chair and I'm sweating so much. And I said, what have I done? Why am I doing this? I get into his office. He says, I've been told there's 15 minutes in my calendar for you. How can I help you? And I say, hi, my name is Bwalya. I'm a management trainee from Zambia and I'm going back. And I just want to make sure that I don't get lost in the end market and you forget about me. And then he smiles and he says, you're very bold. I said, yes, I am. And I believe that I've got a lot to offer and I'm going to do great things. And if there's an opportunity in South Africa, I'd be happy to come back.
Wow.
And he leans back in his chair. He says, So tell me, what impact or what changes do you think you'd make to the Zambian market? So I highlighted all the good things. Again, when you're given an opportunity like that, my free advice is don't say bad things to make it seem like you'll be a savior. So I spoke about how I could add value. I said, this is what I think. I know I'm doing this well, but we could do it better in this sense, etc., etc. And I came out of there soaked in sweat. Thank God I was wearing a dark colored shirt, shaking. And he shook my hand. And every visit that happened after that, he would look for me and say, how's Bwalya doing? How is she? How is it going? And even when I went back into Cape Town after that, it's because I had made it point to stay in touch with him from knowing how much influence he had in big decisions. So not that he was a mentor, him I would frame more like a sponsor to say, this is an individual I want to speak for me in rooms where I'm not present, but also I would send emails of things I've done, just like a highlight to say,
Wow.
oh, I was able to grow my volume in my area by 20%. This is the initiative that I did. Just thought to catch up. Kind regards. No pun intended.
Love that. Wow, that was bold. Again, it's the audacity showing up. And I think if there's one thing we should take away from this episode is that have more audacity, like your dad would say, what do you have to lose? What's the worst that could happen? Yeah. And I think a key point from that as well is knowing the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. I like that you brought out that distinction. How do you think one should go about getting the most out of a mentorship relationship? And how do you know that this is working?
I think when you're able to be challenged and your thought processes are not, I think every mentoring relationship I've had has challenged me to self-introspect about some of the decisions trying to make or avoiding to make. It really has to push you. It really has to make you see yourself in a different light. And also for me, it's the accountability. Somebody that's able to hold you accountable to certain things that you say. I remember now I have to tell him, my mentor from after my graduate program, when I said I would do my master's, I'm only getting it done 5-6 years later, but it's done. But I said, no, I want to do my MBA. I want to do this. I want to do that. But really somebody who will challenge you to improve yourself, but also to just take into account yourself as a holistic person, career-wise, in your personal life, in your faith life. And that's why I say you can have different mentors simultaneously and or at different seasons in your life.
How do you think a difference in the demographics of the mentor and the mentee impacts the mentorship relationship, if at all?
I think it does. I would be biased on this one because my two most impactful mentors were not Zambian. And they saw the world and opportunities very, very differently because of their experiences and their career journeys. My first mentor who was assigned to me was a woman who was leading an organization. And our board at the time was very male dominated. It was male dominated. She was the only woman by virtue of being CEO as a board member. And I remember walking into the boardroom and looking up at the photos of our board, and she was the only woman. And that for me gave me a sense of, I want to be like that. I want to command a room of men. So there's also the fact that she was in a position of power that I aspired to get to. And I do thank God for her candidness and her strength and the respect she exuded, the way she drove the business for commercial results. Her career right now is still a trailblazer. But culturally, as much as we were inherently both African, her home country, her experiences culturally were also very different from that of your average Zambian, who, not to say we don't really drive for excellence, but in certain instances where average is okay, she had a very different approach to work and her work ethic. So I believe that was also a differentiating factor for her. And the man after that as well, also not Zambian. So the barriers that culturally would be put on a young girl within an organization were never imposed on me because he literally had a different viewpoint from his experiences from the many different countries he had worked in prior to heading the Zambia business. So I do believe it has an impact, and I could be biased in that sense because of the experiences I've had. It could be different for somebody else.
It sounds like having those differences brings a lens that you wouldn't have because, you're kind of limited to your lived experience while having these people who are a different demographic, different background, who see opportunities and perspectives that you will not have. While others, like you said, might lean towards they want someone who's like them so that the person can have more empathy and can understand them better. So I think, it depends on what you want. But I like that the differences in demographics, it sounds like it's primarily a good thing.
But it's ultimately, what do you want out of it? Do you want somebody that provokes your thinking, your thought process, what you know to be true? Or do you want somebody who aligns with you and supports you in that comfort of knowing? It could work differently for different people.
Yeah, and for different phases of life as well. In your experience, how does one know when a mentorship relationship has run its course?
For me, my first mentor left, so it was very difficult to stay in touch. So that was just a bad breakup, I guess. We drifted apart. So we call it that with my first mentor. My second mentor, he just told me that he had gotten me where I needed to be. And I could see it when he started recommending other people to mentor me.
So he broke up with you.
So he says, okay, there's this lady who's doing amazing things in her field who I think you should speak to. And I'm like, but our conversations are going okay, no? But it's also that realization and taking a step back to say, he said he doesn't have the capability to take me any further because I've learned everything he can teach me. That was a humbling conversation for us to have. So I do still keep in touch with him here and there. But at that point of, I need to pass on the baton to women within certain sectors that can help drive for, he says, I can't give you advice about women being a woman in the boardroom. I can't give you advice about, the challenges that come with being a young woman doing this because I don't have that point of reference. So it literally becomes to say, what more can you learn from that person? Introspection, and then finding time to respectfully move on from those relationships.
Respectfully.
No, these are people that have created a huge impact in your life. So that's why I say respectfully moving on.
Respectfully. Yeah. Okay. And have you experienced any lowlights or setbacks in your career?
Of course. I don't think any of us have had a smooth ride career-wise. I think for me, learning a lowlight could have been applied for a job in another end market at our head office in the UK, getting the job, going through all the interview processes, starting to unwind from said current role at the time, handing over, having a farewell party.
Oh my goodness.
And then, it was bad. I got gifts and everything, and we took pictures and there were tears, only to be told that I didn't get a visa.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't get a visa. So it wasn't easy to then reintegrate yourself into a role you had mentally moved on from and to do a good job and to deliver with excellence. That's where that showing up and removing yourself from self comes in because the job still needed to get done even when my heart was in shambles. I mean, I'd sold my things and I was ready to leave the country and it just didn't work out the way it was supposed to.
You clearly did a good job of recovering from it, seeing as you are where you are.
If you look at it now, yes, but at the time it was really, really horrible.
And how did you go about recovering from that setback?
I leaned a lot on my family, hey, because also people are not good people all the time. There was all whispers and laughs and, oh, look at her at the office. I kept my head down. I did the work that I needed to do. Very difficult to feel enthusiastic about work that you've moved on from mentally. But I think it just took time. So I think with the passing of time, I felt like myself again. And I think with the support of my family.
What's something you're looking forward to in the future?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I'm looking at continuing to make impactful campaigns. I'm looking at driving positive brand perception. I'm looking to breaking stereotypes of brands to say, oh, this brand can't do this or this brand can't do that. So it's just that it's such a beautiful thing to overhear your brand being spoken about in the light that you intend it to be. So if I can make an impact on the brands I work on in that regard, then that's something really, really cool.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming and doing this episode with us. I always tell people you don't have to hate your job. And when I think of people who love their jobs, I think of you. So to anyone out there, you don't have to dislike what you do. There are people out there who are thriving in areas that they're passionate about. So yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I do love what I do. I love it. After the Lead Summit, supporting the innovation team, I said, this is like when passion meets purpose. And people around me are like, oh my gosh, that's so cliche. But really and truly, I enjoy creating. I enjoy building things that people will ultimately enjoy and consume and just hold on to.
Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful place to be when you live out cliches.
Yes.
In closing, what's one quote you'd like our listeners to take away following this discussion? And what's a call to action for them to implement following this episode?
So from a quote perspective, there's one that's ingrained in my brain. My sister's house, I don't know if it's still there. I think she's moved it. There's a quote by Buddha that says, a person needs someone to love, something to do, and something to hope for. So it's a quote by Buddha. And for me, it just speaks to really someone to love, where your heart can be poured out, something to do, what keeps your fingers twiddling your thumbs, and something to hope for the future and what more that life has to offer.
Beautiful.
My call to action would be prepared. Opportunity meets preparation. So as you're praying for your next big break, as you're looking forward to what's coming next, what are you doing in that season to prepare yourself for your next role, for your next big thing? I had one morning, I got to the office at, I think, 6:30, and our GM at the time found me in the office because my car was only on the car park. So he comes to my office and says, what are you doing here? I said, boss, I'm working for my next role. And he laughed at me. He's like, okay. That was a year into the current job. I was ready to move into something with more responsibility. So I had started to take on more responsibility. So not to say it's going to be a straight line or it's going to be something that happens in a fairy tale sense, but just be prepared.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you everyone for listening. I hope you found this episode insightful and inspirational. You can catch up with Bwalya on LinkedIn by following her at Bwalya Mundashi. Wishing you a great week. Kind regards, Zamiwe.